Welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking.
I was very nervous, obviously, to tell them what I was doing because, that's kind of a big deal. And I'm not going PRN because, I'm having children, for example, or some like big life change. It's because I want to travel. My boss was super cool and she was like, I'm fine with that as long as you agree to come back, during times that we're kind of like short staffed, like summer coverage, vacation, and around the holidays. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So that's kind of how it got started. And then my husband did consulting like completely remotely while we were on the road. So we actually had saved up a ton of money in addition to a ton of points for this trip. And we didn't have to, thankfully, eat into our savings because of the points and because of how we set up our work schedule.
Hello, points people. Lindsay Bradley from Lindsay Taylor 3 has visited all 7 continents, more than 60 countries, and every Disney park. Many of those using points and miles during a series of mini retirements that she and her husband took in 2019 and 2020. In today's episode, we discuss how to negotiate for a mini retirement and also the details behind how Lindsay and her husband logistically saved more than $200,000 over the course of 2 years as they took these mini retirements every few months, because it wasn't just a one-time thing. Looking to build out an arsenal of cards that can help you take life-changing trips like Lindsay's? Check out the cards at www.geobreezetravel.com/cards, which you can find in the show notes. As a disclaimer, if you apply for cards through those links, the banks pay me a commission, and then I do a little dance. And that's how we power this show, with credit card sign-up money and happy dances. And now, on with the show. Hey, Lindsay, welcome to the Geobreeze Travel Podcast.
Hi, Julia. Thanks for having me. I know we finally made it happen, so I'm glad that we're chatting today.
Of course, yeah. We've been delaying this one for a couple months. Both of us just have had to reschedule with crazy schedules going on. So I'm excited we get to have this conversation today about all of your points and miles knowledge. But before we jump into all of that, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the wonderful game of points and miles.
Yeah, so I grew up pretty poor. We didn't travel, wasn't really exposed to a whole lot, growing up. And after I graduated college, I knew like I had the wanderlust bug. I wanted to go do and see it all. And obviously that costs money. So it was 10 years ago, actually, I signed up for my first points card. I signed up for the Capital One Venture card. I don't remember the offer at the time, but I'm sure it wasn't that great. But I was like, oh, yay, I'm going to like get free travel. This is so cool. So that's kind of like what kicked it off. And so I first started traveling domestically because I wasn't super comfortable with like going abroad yet. I was just kind of testing the waters. And then I had my first like big international travel. I did like a group tour. And ever since then, I was like, okay, that's it. I got to go see as much of the world as possible. So, and then I kind of took a little bit of a break because I went to grad school. And then after grad school, I knew, okay, time to hit the road again. So probably about 4 years ago, my husband and I got into travel hacking like really heavily. It actually all started one night. I was on Facebook at like 2 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. I got a Facebook suggested group of 10x travel. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. And I joined the group. And I had already opened like a couple of cards, but I had no idea about 524, any of that. And then found the group and started reading everything I could online, and just it kind of all snowballed from there. So over about a year, maybe year and a half, my husband and I accumulated 3.5 million points, and we made it our goal to take off and travel the world. So we started that trip in November of 2018. We left. We flew business class on Singapore Air with points. And we visited, I believe, from 2018 until the pandemic hit, that period of time, in about a year and a half, we visited 33 countries and just used our points and miles the whole journey.
That is incredible. So tell us a little bit more and let's unpack each step here. How did you earn that many millions of points and miles? How many credit cards were you opening?
So we would just open like literally whatever card we could get a hold of. I didn't find out about 524 until after I had already started. So it definitely wasn't optimized the way I guess it could have been, but we had to pay for our wedding on our own and we decided to do a destination wedding. So we got married in Santorini. So all of that got put on credit cards. My in-laws, I needed to make like appliance purchases. So I asked if I could put it on cards to meet sign-up bonuses. And also my old apartment actually let us charge rent to the credit card, which is amazing. It had a small fee. It was like $22, but to meet the sign up bonus, like that was totally worth it. So we just opened as many cards as we could and in about a year over a year.
Which cards were you opening? Because you can only get up to 5 Chase cards. So were you just going through all of the American Express cards or what cards
Yes.
were you doing?
So this was back in the day when you could have both Chase Sapphire products at the same time. So we got both of those. That was like one of our first cards. I got the Amex Platinum when it was back into 100 and I think it was 100,000 point offer at the time. I got the City card, which was 85,000 at the time, which it's now again. My husband also got that card. We opened a couple of AA cards, a United card. I think at one point we had like most cards except for Southwest. We never we never bother with that because we knew our goal was like international travel. And they do travel internationally, but we were looking at other things, other goals. But most of the main cards I would say that we had, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, yeah, all the big major hotels, Hyatt, Marriott, IHG, we each had all those cards. So, yeah, it was a lot to keep track of.
How did you keep track of it?
Old school spreadsheets. We, plotted everything out. I know there are better ways to track it nowadays, but we would just have a line for every card and our date opened, when we met at the sign up bonus, if we were going to keep the card after a year with the annual fee, that type of stuff. And then we worked off of spreadsheets to actually plan our trips. So how we initially got started is we looked at a map of the world and we're like, okay, we want to go here, 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 and here. Okay, then we picked out individual cities and we're like, which city has a Hyatt, for example, or a Marriott? And so we'd go through, we'd look at their properties, we'd be like, oh, this property is this many points with Hyatt, this many points with Marriott, but this looks like a better property. So we're going to go with this hotel brand. And we basically just spreadsheeted out every place that we were going to stay and the points allotted for each of those places.
So I know this was a few years ago, but walk us through like each destination this trip and what were you flying to get there? Which hotels were you staying at there? And any tips and tricks that you have for that destination. So where all did you go? And was it one continuous trip, like an around the world redemption, or just like a whole bunch of little things strung together?
Okay, so this is a big question. So there's a lot to unpack here. So it was a big trip, but we split it up. So basically what I would do is I work in healthcare, so I can't just take a year off because of my skills and keeping up my licensing and credentialing. So what we did is we would take off for 3 months at a time. We go travel, usually pick a region so we weren't hopping around too much. And then we'd come home and I would work for 6 to 8 weeks. And then we'd go back for another 3 months and just rinse and repeat until the pandemic hit. But we started in Asia actually. Our first redemption was business class Singapore Air from SFO, and that flight is so long. I think it's about 17 hours. So there's no way we're flying economy. So I think Alex transferred Amex points to Chris Flyer, and then we flew business class, and that was like the start of our journey. So the first leg we focused on Asia, and I will say actually for the first leg, because we went to some places that are pretty cheap and affordable, like in Thailand and Vietnam, we didn't do a ton of redemptions that first 3 months. We spent cash and did a couple Airbnbs, although we did do Hilton for Hanoi, Vietnam, I believe. it was 10,000 points for the Hilton Hanoi per night. We did the 5 nights to get one night free. So it was actually like super cheap redemption. So that's what we did the first leg. And the second leg was part Asia and part Europe. And we only did it like that because we just happened to transfer AA miles to Etihad, and we did business class with them from Shanghai direct to Rome, actually. And I don't remember exactly. I think it was somewhere in the ballpark of like 65,000 points. It was such a good redemption, and so we were like, yeah, we have to go from one continent to the other because that's like the best and easiest way to do it. So, yeah, and then the third leg was all Europe. So we spent the whole 3 months in Europe. And the fourth leg got canceled because that was our South American leg. And we were there in March. We were in Colombia in March of last year when the world shut down. So we had to come back very, very quickly and didn't get to do all of our redemptions that we wanted to for that leg. But yeah.
So you mentioned you're in healthcare and then you would take off for 3 months, work for 6 to 8 weeks, take off for another 3 months. How do you negotiate that? Because I'm sure a lot of people are like, no way my boss is going to let me do that.
Yeah, so this is something like I really encourage like anybody in healthcare to do if you have the opportunity to do it. Basically what I did was I went PRN, meaning like as needed at my hospital. And I was very nervous, obviously, to tell them what I was doing because I mean that's kind of a big deal. And I'm not going PRN because I'm having children, for example, or some like big life change. It's because I want to travel. My boss was super cool, and she was like, "I'm fine with that as long as you agree to come back." During times that were kind of like short staffed, like summer coverage, vacation, and around the holidays. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So that's kind of how it got started. And then my husband did consulting like completely remotely while we were on the road. So we actually had saved up a ton of money in addition to a ton of points for this trip. And we didn't have to, thankfully, eat into our savings because of the points and because of how we set up our work schedule.
So he was still working while you guys were taking these different trips. He was just working remotely from different continents.
Yeah. And it was just consulting. So it was about hours, 10 to maximum 20 hours a week. So we still had a lot of free time to go and explore stuff. But yeah, he would have to take like 2 a.m. calls in Bali because of the time difference. But it was totally worth it.
What type of consulting?
He works in marketing for a tech company.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, I was imagining like a management consulting firm where I'm like, oh, so he's working like 70 hours a week, like, but at 3 in the morning, which is not how it went.
No, it was definitely a unicorn situation. We had both planned to quit our jobs completely and travel, and we were going to just do like 1 year and just do like 1 year at a time, or like a little under a year just because of my licensing issue. But then kind of a unicorn situation popped up, and it's something that I don't think is that actually special or unique. I think people could make this work. It just kind of like the stars kind of have to all align at the same time.
Or just have enough money saved up that you're like, we can go a year without income. Were
Yeah.
you paying rent still that you had to like come back and like in those 6 to 8 weeks you were working, so you still had a home base in the United States?
Yeah, so my home base was in San Jose, which is where my in-laws live. So they graciously let us stay with them when we would come home and I would work. And it was a very fun living arrangement though, because it wasn't just my in-laws, it was also my sister-in-law and her husband. So 6 adults and 3 pets in a 1,600 square foot home, but it was fun. We made it all work. It was a great experience.
Is that a 3 bedroom home?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot of people and pets.
Yeah.
So, but 6 to 8 weeks and then you're off on the road again.
Yep.
All right. So, what's next now that you've taken all of these different trips?
So that's a good question. And I'm still honestly like trying to figure it out. Like, I didn't want to be done with our trip. We weren't planning to be done, but the pandemic hit. And that, of course, has changed the course of the world. So we're still traveling, but we're definitely not doing any long hauls anymore, especially with like different COVID restrictions and testing requirements for different countries. So we're just taking shorter trips, like a week or two at a time, and kind of planning for what our future looks like. We want to eventually move abroad at some point or own property abroad at some point and kind of split our time between there and here. Like that would be kind of like the ideal situation.
Where at abroad? Do you have a dream country?
So there's two that we really have our eyes set on, Thailand and Portugal. So Portugal, it's kind of like you can kind of do a fast track to get a passport there to get partial citizenship. It's pretty pretty easy compared to other countries in Europe. And then Thailand, we both just love Thailand so much that we would just love to spend, more time there and just really like getting engrossed in the culture there. So
Very cool. Do you have any idea how much money it would have cost to take all of those trips that you took during your mini retirements year if someone just tried to recreate it out of pocket?
yeah, so I have tried to actually we used to track what we were saving with our points redemptions. And then we just got really busy because we actually had a little bit faster pace than I would probably do again if I were to do this trip. But if I were to guesstimate, it would probably be somewhere around $200,000 over the course of almost 2 years of doing this. The biggest redemptions were we had several business class flights. We had business class flights with Singapore, Etihad, Cathay Pacific. There's one more that I can't quite remember. And then one of the redemptions was I mentioned it on my little form was we stayed at the Hotel Imperial. It's on the Liguorian coast in Italy. And we used 68,000 chase points, but in the summertime, that particular room retails for $2,500 a night. So it was crazy. We had this whole rooftop terrace that was like bigger than my house. So we could just look over the coast. And that's what I did for my birthday. And it was one of my favorite redemptions.
Is this a boutique hotel? So the only way to really do this is through the Chase portal?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds incredible. Hey there, points people. Are you interested in learning some next level tips about cards, airlines, hotels, stacking, where to find award availability, and more? Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/geobreezetravel. There, you'll find recordings of all of my monthly masterclass hangouts, as well as some special bonus content. And now, we are also doing some gift card giveaways each month to some lucky Patreon members. Check out the show notes for the link to join. This week's Patreon shoutout goes out to Vianney. Thank you so much for being a part of the Geobreeze Travel Patreon community. What else did this room come with? So in addition to the terrace, you had to come with just room service. Was it basically a house that they put on top of a hotel? Like you could stay in a mansion for $2,500 a night? Tell us more about this hotel.
Yeah, it's a historical hotel. So it's actually where they signed the Treaty of Rapallo, which ended World War One. So it's this very, very beautiful, historic, kind of Victorian hotel. The particular room that I stayed in used to be used for like aristocracy and that type of thing when royalty would be in the area to visit. It didn't come with anything other than breakfast and some wine, but it also came with this huge terrace that we just enjoyed the whole time while we were there.
And you have a pretty big Instagram as well. Is that when you were growing? Your Instagram was just while you were traveling abroad and people were asking, how are you affording to do this? How are you taking off of work? Is that kind of how that played in the timeline as well?
Yeah, definitely how that happened, but I've been like not I've been kind of more low key on Instagram lately just cuz we're kind of shifting our focus right now because we just bought a home and started new jobs and stuff. But yeah, I would get questions all the time like which card should I open? What's the best card for travel? And so I just started talking about it more on my stories, more so than my actual posts. But I started talking about it more on my stories, just sharing like, hey, we got this hotel for free and this would have cost us like $500. And so then, it kind of snowballs from there. People are curious because they want to, do the same. And so I'm always happy to share and my DMs are always open.
And you have really, really great photos too. Is that just a hobby that you're really into photography as you travel?
Yeah. So my husband and I have both been into photography for a while. And about 4 years ago, we started taking it a little bit more seriously. So we got like a little bit nicer camera and we took lessons from a professional. And so, because I really wanted to learn it, there's a lot that goes into photography, of course. So I was like, all right, the only way I'm going to get better is if somebody like actually teaches me and then I go out and practice. And two, I knew we were taking this big trip and it's such like a special experience to have that I wanted to have nice photos to remember my trip by. So
That makes sense. And at the beginning, you mentioned that you grew up without a lot of money and now you have all of these amazing travel experiences. How has that mindset shift just kind of happened where you're like, we can afford such cool things and we can afford to take time off of work and not work for months at a time? Was that a challenge in and of itself when you were planning for this, not just accumulating points and money, but the whole, we're not going to work for 3 months. What if something bad happens?
yeah, no, it's still like something that I think about all the time, almost every day. Like every day is almost a pinch me moment, really, because grew up single parent household. We lived off of food stamps and government housing until my mom worked really hard and went back to school to become a nurse. And that was when I was in eighth grade. So I saw how hard she worked and I saw everything that went into it. And that's part of the reason why I went into healthcare as well. And I just knew I was like, whatever I do in life, I have to get an education and I have to get a good job to get like anything I want, in this life. And so when I first even thought of this, it just it almost was like I can't believe that I could actually dream this up and actually do it. I didn't really go anywhere growing up, so I thought like a trip to New York City would be like a huge deal, and now I've been to all 7 continents and over 60 countries, so it still doesn't even seem real sometimes.
That's crazy. And what does your family think of all of this? Are they like, wow, it's possible? Or are they just like, this is all crazy and insane? And how do you have this many credit cards?
Well, first, the credit card thing was like, red flags for part of my family because, not growing up with any money, you don't look at money the same way. And credit cards are bad, because people rack up debt. I've never carried a balance. Like, that's the biggest tip that I can give for anybody trying to get in the points game. Never carry a balance. That defeats the purpose of doing this. And so, yeah, when I first started opening them, they're like, what are you thinking? Like, this is going to hurt your credit. It obviously didn't hurt my credit, but they're really happy for us and like all of the experiences that we're going to be able to do. And I'm actually taking my mom on a mother-daughter trip next week because I just want to like pay her back a little bit in some way. And so, yeah, so we're going to Antigua for a week and we're going to stay in an overwater bungalow there. And I'm super excited to like share this experience with her. And because I obviously have what I have because she works so hard too. So yeah.
That's so nice. What hotel is it with the overwater bungalows in Antigua?
It's called Royalton Antigua. That was unfortunately not a points redemption because it's like a boutique hotel and the points didn't make sense with the Chase portal. But I'm staying at another hotel on points. So, and the flights are on points. So,
That's so cool. Well, these are all amazing redemptions that you've gotten to take. You said you did 33 countries in just 3 years while you were doing these redemptions?
yeah.
That's crazy. That's about as many as I've been in my life over many years, which is still a lot compared to most people. Most people never even imagine getting to see 30 countries. So being able to do that in 3 years and saving $200,000 is probably what seems like a far-fetched dream to a lot of people, but you can do it with points and miles.
It's definitely 100% doable. I will say, obviously too, we had a lot to spend, so that's why we had so many points. Obviously, it's not every day or every year that you get married, and that's a huge expense. So that's how we got the vast majority of our points. And now that we bought a home, we don't have anything because we literally sold everything that we had to travel. So now we're like slowly and getting things for our home, but I'm like, okay, now which card can we open now because we need to buy a bed.
Yeah, that's a good point too, where some people are like, oh, let me furnish my home like all at once. But if you've only opened one card and you only need to spend $5,000 on that card, but you need to buy $20,000 of furniture, which is a ton of furniture, like, yeah, maybe space it out. If you can live without some bathroom shelving or something, if you can
Yeah.
hold off for a few months, then that's a really good strategy.
Yep.
Do you and your husband have a similar travel style when it comes to how you want to redeem your points for different hotels, or do you have to kind of negotiate different styles?
We definitely don't have the same interest on how we like to spend our points. I prefer to make it last as long as possible, with the exception of sometimes, splurging here and there for like a really cool hotel if it's like something super unique. He, on the other hand, really is that likes to fly business. He's a little more bougie traveler than I am. So when we disagree on things like flights, I end up sitting in economy and he ends up in business or first. And it's fine, it's fine. I get a little butt hurt when I see him like going up to first class and I'm like in the back, but it's worth it because I know I'm going to save the points to use for something else later.
Are you like explaining this to your different seatmates in economy where they're like, "Oh, are you solo traveling?" You're like, "No, my husband's in first class. It's fine. It's fine."
Yeah. So we took a flight from Tahiti to Tokyo, and he was up in first business class and I was in the back. And when we landed, we're deboarding the plane. So I start to walk towards business because I'm trying to meet up with my husband. And the flight attendant stopped me and was like, "Excuse me, ma'am, you can't be up here. You can't be up here." And I'm like, I'm not trying to get into business class. I'm just trying to meet up with my husband. So it was kind of funny. They like didn't want me up there. But yeah, no, I don't tell the people that I'm sitting with because I think they would be like, "Why did your husband leave you?" I'm like, "Well, he likes to make sure he's a little more relaxed and especially for like long haul flights, he like refuses to do it in economy. So, and I don't mind that much. So I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever."
Is he super tall?
Not I mean, he's 6'1", but
Yeah.
he says he really needs to sleep. I can sleep on planes and he can't unless he's in a lie flat. So I'm like, okay, fine. If that means that you're going to be rested and you'll be able to like go and actually do activities, then all right, well, let's do it.
Yeah, that's a good negotiation point. Um, cool. So, since it seems like you've opened most of the cards already, what cards are you still opening these days?
My next card, I think I want to, well, I actually don't know. I have to figure this out. I need to open, I was going to open the Amex Gold card when it was 75,000. I got a targeted offer and I applied for it. And then because I have a new address change, it got rejected because it didn't match up with my background profile information. But now when I try to look at my offers, it's not there anymore and I don't want to apply for it if it's 60,000. So I'm still trying to figure out the next card that I want to get. My husband's signing up for the preferred with Chase this week. So that's the next card he's getting. I got the new United card. I just got that one. So yeah, no, I don't know the next card to get. I'm still trying to figure that out. So if you have any suggestions.
I'm surprised you haven't had the gold one already.
No, I haven't had that one yet.
You could try applying in incognito mode. Got the Amex Business Gold that way, and I forgot what the normal offer would be. I think normally it's like 70,000 points for 10,000 of minimum spend. I could be making that up. But whatever I got was I only needed to meet 6,000 of minimum spend and I got 10,000 more points in the sign up bonus by checking it in incognito mode. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
try that.
That's good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, so you've shared so much knowledge, and this is so cool that you've gotten to travel so much and take all these little mini retirements and use your points and miles to travel the world, which I think so many people just wait so long before they take time off of work because they're always afraid that if they take time off, they're not going to be marketable again once they come back and try to find jobs or something. So I just think that's so cool that you've done that. And now I'm almost kind of inspired to be like, oh, maybe I should just like take a year off or something.
No, you should
So,
totally just do it. Just go for it. I mean, life is short. And that was definitely one of my husband's biggest concerns when I first proposed the idea of like 1 year abroad. He was like, absolutely not. He's like, I'll do 6 months, but I can't have a 1 year gap on my resume. That's not going to look good. And I was like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. Like, we're going to figure it out. And then this like consulting gig kind of showed up. So even though he didn't work that much while we were gone the first year and a half, he still like didn't have a break in his job. And then for me, I have to maintain a certain number of clinical hours every 2 years. So I had to go back and make sure I had enough hours, and of course, like make sure my skills are up. But I think work is kind of like riding a bike. Like, yeah, it's been a while, but you just go back and do it. And then you're like, okay, yeah, I'm back into the swing of things again. And I definitely encourage anybody and everybody to do it if they can do it. We've had a couple of friends that did it before us, but they weren't doing it with the miles, the points and miles. They were just saving up and then just taking off for a year. So I knew we had to do it differently because I didn't want to, blow through all of our savings to go do this trip. So it ended up working out really nicely.
That's awesome. So, if you had one piece of advice for everybody who wants to take a mini retirement on points and miles, what would your one line piece of advice be for an Instagram quote card?
My biggest advice would honestly just be just go full bore and just dive into it. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be the perfect, travel situation or the perfect age to do this. I think if you're prepared and you've saved up points and you've saved up some cash because, emergencies come up, then you should just go and do it. Yeah. I mean, life is short and you never know what tomorrow will bring. So, and the things that I've learned from traveling have really just changed my life for the better and given me a whole different perspective on the world and how I interact with people. So, it's totally worth it.
That's awesome. And speaking of great advice, can you give a shout out to somebody else on the internet who people should go check out for awesome points and miles advice?
Yeah, World Travel Adventures on Instagram. They're a family that travels with points and miles. They're a great source to follow too.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have them on the show, and they have such great content too, and an amazing blog. So we look forward to having them on the show. And where can we find you on the internet?
Right now I'm just on Instagram. It's a Lindsay_Taylor 3. I don't have a blog. I've been trying to start a blog and we actually talked to somebody to help us get it started and that like formatting fell through and now I'm busy because I have like 4 jobs. So I haven't had time to really sit down and do it or decide if like that's definitely what I'm going to do. So we've also talked about doing a travel app, which I think would be fun, but these are all just like ideas that are brewing for now. So
What are your 4 jobs?
oh, it's all I do. I'm a nurse anesthetist, so it's all anesthesia related, just at 4 different facilities. So
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
yeah, I've always had multiple jobs, and that's part of like when I would come home on our travel breaks. I had 2 jobs at the time, so I would just work anywhere between 50 and 70 hours a week and just crank out as many cases as I could so that we could save money for the next leg and whatever else we needed to do. So,
And so you could get all your clinical hours in like that short amount of time.
mhm.
Crazy. Well, wow, that's a lot. 4 jobs. But I guess if you're kind of just like, so is it structured like you're almost freelancing or just contracted at 4 different places instead of like a salaried employee at a hospital?
No, so it's a little complicated. I'm actually a full-time employee at a hospital, but they're really generous. I have 6 weeks paid vacation and I just got bumped up to 7 weeks. So I basically just use my PTO to go work at the other places or pick up on the weekends. So, yeah.
Is a lot of hours. That is a grind. I commend you for that.
So that's why we haven't traveled anywhere. I haven't left the state of Texas in 2021, so I'm like I need to get out now. So yeah.
Cool. Well, it has been so much fun having you on the show. We learned so much about how to take a mini retirement, how to travel the world on points. And really, I think the most important thing that we've gotten out of this episode is that it's possible. And you just need to make a roadmap and tell yourself to go for it. And the job market will not die if you take some time off of work. So that's a really good
No.
message.
And I definitely think, especially today after the pandemic, so many people are deciding to leave their jobs because, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people have been remote the past year and a half. And so if companies say, no, I want you in the office, you're like, well, why do I need to be in the office? I got my work done from home. So why can't I just be remote? So I think now there's even a greater push than there was before we did this to be remote and to be online and to have that flexibility to go and just do the things you want to do and travel and have a better work life balance.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Geobreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!